"Want to help? Don't touch me." Madison said the words over her shoulder, cabinet door still open. Wooden spoon tapping the edge of the pot, like a metronome marking time until detonation. No eye contact, no hesitation. Just a clean slice through whatever we used to be. I leaned against the granite counter that cost us 3 months of overtime pay from the Morrison residential project. "That's a new rule." "It's a rule for tonight," she answered, shutting the cabinet with more force than a door that expensive deserved. "Figure it out." If I'd known where that line was headed, I would have cleared my calendar and put up traffic cones around my life. But you don't see the avalanche coming when you're standing in it, thinking you're just dealing with loose rocks. I tried again, keeping my voice level as a foundation pour. "You've been cold for weeks. Did I miss something? The Morrison project deadline stress? Your mother calling with more complaints about Dad? You and me? Cole." She cut in like a foreman ending a safety meeting that's run too long. "If you want to help, stop hovering." I stepped back, hands finding my pockets where my work gloves usually lived. "Copy that." She went back to stirring whatever was in that pot, and I stood there watching steam rise like it had somewhere better to be than our kitchen. The silence stretched until it snapped under its own weight. The next evening I tried the soft route that usually worked when we hit rough patches. Poured wine into glasses that actually matched. Set real plates instead of the paper ones I grabbed when I was too tired to think. Lit a candle I found buried in the junk drawer beneath takeout menus and dead batteries. We ate in the quiet hum of the dishwasher, running its cycle like background machinery on a job site. I told her I could handle the dry cleaning run tomorrow and get those new tires mounted on her car before the weekend. Basic husband maintenance, nothing fancy or dramatic. Just the kind of support that keeps a household running smooth. She picked at her salad like she was looking for something wrong with it, chewed slowly, and scrolled through her phone like I was ambient noise from the neighbor's lawnmower. "You're somewhere else," I said, pushing my chair back from the table. "I can tell." "I'm tired." "From what?" "From explaining." "So you agree there's something to explain?" She stood up, collected her plate with the precision of someone who'd measured the gesture, and walked it to the sink like she was carrying evidence to be disposed of. "You make everything a staff meeting, Cole. Let it breathe." "Let what breathe?" "Our marriage." She turned the water on full blast, the kind of volume that drowns out conversation. "Don't do drama." "I offered help," I said, keeping my tone level as a laser line. "You swatted me away like a fly that landed on blueprints." "You're sensitive lately. It's not attractive." I pulled the wine cork out a little farther, just to have something to do with my hands that wouldn't get me in trouble with HR if this were a work conversation. Attractive isn't the metric here. Respect is. She laughed once, sharp as a nail gun misfire when the compressor's running hot. "You're giving a TED talk in our kitchen." "Fine," I answered, setting my glass down with the kind of control I used when handling expensive materials. "New rules then. I won't push for talks. I'll give you space, and I'll stop trying to guess what you need." "Finally," she said, lifting her glass like she was toasting the end of something. "Progress." That night, I started living by my new rules like they were safety protocols that could save someone's life. No checking in about her schedule, no gentle reminders about appointments or commitments. I set my alarm for 5:30 instead of 6, hit the gym before heading to the job site, and stayed late at the office afterward, reviewing tomorrow's materials deliveries and crew assignments. I stopped preloading her week with thoughtful gestures that apparently felt like micromanagement. Her calendar became her project to manage, not mine to anticipate. 2 days later, I ran into her sister Sydney at the hardware store on 5th Street. She was in line with a basket full of cabinet hardware and drawer pulls, wearing that grin she never bothered hiding around me. "You look leaner," she said, eyeing me up and down like she was measuring square footage for a renovation estimate. "Stress diet or actual gym?" "Actual gym. 5:30 starts." She leaned closer, lowering her voice below the ambient noise of customers and cash registers. "If Madison keeps freezing you out, there's a whole city full of women who'd say thank you for what you bring to the table." "Not my game," I told her, shifting my weight like I was testing the stability of scaffolding. "I'm married." "So is she," Sydney replied, paying for her purchase and touching my arm for exactly 1 second longer than necessary. Professional contact that crossed into personal territory. "You're the only one acting like it matters." "No double lives, Sydney. That's not how I'm built." "I hear you," she said, walking toward the automatic doors. "I'll try not to run into you again by accident." She winked over her shoulder. "Try harder." I walked to my truck with a bag of screws and the echo of that wink. Filed it under noise and distraction because that's what you do when you're trying to save something at home that might still be worth the effort. At work, my crew noticed I'd gone quiet in a way that wasn't normal. Brock, my lead foreman who'd been with me for 3 years, dropped into the chair across from my desk with the sandwich wrapped in deli paper and that look older brothers wear when they're about to interfere in your business. "You good, boss?" "I'm fine." "False," he said, unwrapping. His lunch with the deliberate movements of someone settling in for a real conversation. "You're running equipment like it owes you money, and you're checking measurements twice when you never do that." I shrugged, not looking up from the structural plan spread across my desk. "House is weird." "Weird how? Like foundation problems weird? Or like electrical shorts weird? Like cold shoulders and short answers weird?" Brock nodded like he'd diagnosed the problem. "Want me to run interference if she swings by the site? Sometimes women get different when there's an audience." I waved him off. "She won't come here. Too much dust for her shoes." She did. That same afternoon, walked into our job trailer like she owned the entire development and didn't pretend she was there to say hello or check on how my day was going. "I need you to transfer me $1,500, she said, voice cool as concrete in winter, eyes focused on the clipboard where contractors sign off on daily progress reports. "For what?" I asked, staying behind my desk on purpose, keeping the workspace between us like a professional barrier. "Don't do that," she replied, shifting her weight in a way that suggested this wasn't a request. "Just send it." "We're adults," I said, leaning back in my chair with the measured calm I used when subcontractors tried to rush me into bad decisions. "We discuss numbers like adults. What's the expense category?" "It's mine. Why is this difficult?" Brock looked at me, then looked away, then studied the project timeline pinned to the wall very intently, like he was memorizing every delivery date and milestone deadline. I kept it simple and direct. "Starting today, we're using a shared spreadsheet for finances. Joint expenses go on it with documentation. Personal wants don't get automatic funding." She smiled, but it wasn't the kind that reached her eyes or suggested anything friendly. "You're setting allowances now?" "I'm setting structure. I'm not a bank machine you can access without authorization. If this is urgent, give me the category and justification. If it's a want, it waits until we can discuss it properly." "Wow," she said, flipping her hair in a gesture I'd never seen her use before, like she was performing for an invisible audience. "The construction site makes you brave. It makes me clear about expectations. That's the new rule." She held my stare for 3 full seconds, long enough for me to count them, then slid her phone into her purse with the deliberate movements of someone ending a negotiation that didn't go their way. "Forget it. Already handled." "Good." She spun toward the door, then pivoted back with the precision of someone who'd rehearsed the movement. "Don't embarrass me like this again." "You came here," I replied, keeping my palm flat on the desk surface, maintaining control of my physical space and emotional temperature. "In front of my crew. You brought the Ichio theater. I just closed the stage." She left without another word, letting the trailer door swing shut behind her with enough force to rattle the temporary walls. As silence settled back over the workspace, Brock whistled low and long, the way he did when we discovered foundation problems that were going to cost extra time and money to fix properly. "Boundaries," he said, unwrapping the second half of his sandwich. "I can smell them from here, boss, fresh poured and setting up solid." That night, Madison made chicken parmesan, which she hated cooking because of the mess it created, and set the table like we were hosting a magazine shoot for Better Homes and Gardens. She even brought me a beer without being asked and inquired about the Morrison project timeline, with what sounded like genuine interest. It was too neat to be random, too coordinated to be spontaneous. "This looks good," I said, cutting into the dish with appreciation for the effort it represented. "I know I've been distant," she said, eyes on her plate like she was reading from a script written there. "Work's been demanding with all these new property listings coming on the market. If you want a night to yourself, take it," I said, chewing slowly. "I won't chase you around the house looking for explanations." She nodded like I'd given her permission for something. "Thanks for understanding." 20 minutes later, she moved her chair closer to mine and put a hand on my shoulder like we'd rehearsed the blocking for this scene during the day. "I'm trying," she said with the kind of vulnerability that felt calculated. Good. Me too. She watched my face for tells, looking for reactions she could catalog and use later. I kept my expression neutral, my cards close to my chest. We finished eating. We cleared the dishes together. She played the role of reconciling wife until bedtime, then rolled away from me under the covers without a word or gesture of actual intimacy. So, that wasn't a genuine truce. It was reconnaissance, data gathering for whatever campaign she was planning. Before dawn, I packed a small duffel bag with essentials and left for the site early, arriving before the concrete truck was scheduled to show up. If she wanted space to operate, I'd give her actual space. Not punishment or passive-aggressive withdrawal, just structural changes to prevent further conflict. 3 nights later, I came home around 9 in the evening. I'd stayed late to review blueprints with Brock and discuss the electrical subcontractor's revised timeline, then grabbed dinner with him and our neighbor Melody, who teaches middle school mathematics and talks about everything like it's a problem with multiple correct solutions. When I opened our front door, I heard Madison's voice drifting from the master bedroom down the hall. She was on the phone, but her tone wasn't the frustrated work voice she used when dealing with difficult clients, or the patient family voice she used when catching up with her mother about her father's retirement activities. This was different, organized, instructional, the kind of voice you use when you're distributing specific orders to people who need to execute a plan. "I'll time it for his birthday," she was saying, her words carrying clearly through the house. "No, it'll land better that way. He'll be surrounded by people he knows. He won't make a scene in front of an audience." I set my keys down on the entry table without making any sound that would alert her to my presence. "Look, the house is community property in this state," she continued, her voice gaining confidence as she outlined whatever strategy she was discussing. "Don't worry about the legal aspects. I've got someone who knows exactly which forms we need. Yes, the bank accounts too. He'll fold if it's public enough, and he feels the social pressure." My jaw didn't move. I took out my phone and hit the record function, then stood in the hallway light that painted a narrow stripe across the hardwood floors I'd refinished myself 2 summers ago. "He's being all, 'Let's fix this' lately," she went on, and I could hear the mockery in her tone. "It's actually pathetic when you think about it. Exactly. I'm done playing house. I want this finished clean, and I want him to feel the impact." A laugh from whoever was on the other end of the call. Madison laughed back, the sound sharp and unfamiliar. "No, I won't tell him beforehand. Why would I give him time to prepare a defense? And if he whines about it afterward, I'm claiming emotional damages. Mental distress from years of his controlling behavior. He's a grown man with a decent income. He'll survive the financial hit." The call continued for another few minutes, but I'd heard enough to understand the scope of what she was planning. I slipped the phone back into my pocket, stepped quietly into the living room, and called out like a neighbor yelling over a fence to announce his arrival. "Hey, I'm home!" Instant silence from the bedroom, then the quick pat of her feet across the hardwood. She appeared in the hallway with her face reset to neutral, like an actor stepping onto stage after a costume change. "You're late tonight. Site ran long. Had to review the electrical plans with the subcontractor and discuss timeline modifications." "You good?" she asked, scanning my face for any indication that I'd overheard her conversation. "Just tired," she said before I could answer. "I'm going to take a shower and get ready for bed." "All right." She went down the hall without asking a single question she would normally ask. "No, how was your day?" "No, who did you eat dinner with?" "No, do you want anything before I disappear into the bathroom?" Just the sound of water running and a bedroom lamp snapping off like a period at the end of a sentence. I sat at the kitchen table with the lingering smell of takeout, containers she'd left on the counter, and looked at the black square of my phone screen. I played the recorded clip once with the volume turned down low, listening through earbuds. Didn't flinch, didn't feel surprised, just collected data like I was reviewing quality control measurements on a construction project. Then I put the phone face down and opened my laptop to start researching what I needed to know. At 8 o'clock the next morning, I sat across from an attorney in a downtown office with windows that showed the whole city waking up to another day of business. The building was the kind of solid concrete and steel construction that would outlast everything around it, built back when people took permanence seriously. He listened to my summary without blinking, asked for the recording, reviewed my bank statements and employment documentation, and took exactly 3 pages of handwritten notes in neat, precise handwriting. "Do I file first?" I asked, leaning forward in the leather chair that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. He shook his head with the confidence of someone who'd handled this exact scenario multiple times. No, you accept whatever paperwork she presents to you. Don't argue with her terms. Don't negotiate in public. Bring everything directly to me, and we'll respond through proper legal channels. She wants to serve me at a party. My birthday celebration? He shrugged like he'd seen this particular play run 100 times in different venues. Then you already know the when and where. That's actually advantageous for our preparation. Get your own housing lined up now. Quietly move essential documents and personal items. Don't be dramatic about it. Be methodical and boring. What about funding? Stop paying for anything that isn't documented as a joint expense. Cancel any credit cards where she's an authorized user. Separate your direct deposit into an individual account. Keep receipts for everything. Done? He slid a plain manila folder across the polished wooden table. Start a detailed log. Times, dates, conversations, requests for money. If she escalates her behavior, write it down with specifics. Don't escalate back. Don't give her ammunition to use against you. I'm not interested in creating chaos, I told him, accepting the folder. I'm interested in documenting accuracy. He smiled like a contractor who just found out the foundation was solid and the permits were all properly filed. Then you'll be fine. Call me immediately after she makes her move. By midnight that same day, I had a month-to-month apartment lease signed on the other side of town, a different mailing address established at a private mailbox service, and my important documents moved under the cover of helping my cousin Austin relocate his woodworking tools to a storage unit. I left everything else in the house exactly where it belonged, so she wouldn't get suspicious about missing items or empty spaces that would alert her to my preparations. Then I systematically changed my daily patterns. Started eating lunch out instead of bringing sandwiches from home. Stopped asking what she wanted from the grocery store when I ran weekend errands. Canceled the joint credit card without announcement and opened an individual checking account at a different bank across town. The next afternoon, I bumped into Sydney at the coffee shop on Main Street that stays busy with real estate agents and small business owners conducting informal meetings over caffeine and pastries. She had that same knowing grin, like mischief was her professional specialty, and she'd turned it into a profitable career. You look like a man with a plan, she said, stirring sugar into her coffee with the measured movements of someone who paid attention to details. Clarity looks like 8 hours of solid sleep, I replied. She reached across the small table and touched my sleeve with the kind of contact that could be interpreted as either casual or intentional. You sure you don't want company while you're making whatever plan you're making? I'm not the kind of guy who runs parallel tracks, I told her, meeting her eyes directly. That's not how I'm constructed. Understood, she said, and her tone suggested she actually did understand the distinction I was making. Then she tilted her head with genuine curiosity. If that situation changes after you've handled whatever you're handling, I'm not difficult to locate. Noted and filed appropriately. Saturday night, our neighborhood group met at Murphy's Tavern for the monthly trivia competition. Different territory from our usual routine, neutral ground where I could observe social dynamics without the pressure of hosting or being hosted. I showed up deliberately late, after the first round of questions had already started. Madison had driven separately and was already established at our usual long table with her friends claiming one side and my buddy Austin with his wife holding down the other end. Look who made time for us little people, Madison announced when I walked through the door, her voice carrying across the room with theatrical projection. Celebrity appearance from the man too busy for his own wife. I hung my jacket on the back of my chair and settled in without rushing. Traffic was brutal coming off the highway. He's been very busy lately, she continued, addressing the table like she was conducting a performance review in front of the board of directors. Lifting weights and staring at mirrors, new priorities for our household breadwinner. Austin glanced at me with the expression of someone watching a chess match where he couldn't predict the next move. I sipped my water and kept my response measured. Mirror's the only thing that applauds when I get home these days, I said. I figured I should bring my own audience. A few genuine chuckles. Around the table, she didn't appreciate the response or the fact that other people found it amusing. We played through the first 2 rounds of questions covering everything from sports statistics to movie trivia from the 1980s. Every answer I offered, she ground down in public with the systematic efficiency of someone who'd prepared for this moment. No, Cole, It's not that year. No, Cole, that's not even close to correct. No, Cole, we already have the right answer covered. The pattern became obvious enough that other people at the table started noticing the dynamic and exchanging glances when they thought we weren't paying attention. By the third round, I'd had enough public correction for one evening. I put my pen down and folded my arms across my chest, with the finality of someone ending a meeting that had run past its useful time. Quick announcement, I said to the entire table. If constructive criticism is only traveling in one direction tonight, I'm removing myself from the target zone. I came here to relax with friends, not to provide entertainment. Her friend Teresa rolled her eyes with the exaggerated gesture of someone who'd heard this complaint before. Oh, please, don't be so dramatic. Not asking for permission, I replied, keeping my tone level and professional. Just stating my position clearly. Madison leaned forward across the table like she was closing a real estate deal. You're being overly sensitive again, Cole. No, I said, standing up and reaching for my wallet. I'm being appropriately selective about how I spend my free time. There's a significant difference. I dropped a $20 bill on the table for my share of the food and drinks, then nodded to Austin with the kind of acknowledgement you give a colleague when leaving a job site early. Good luck with the lightning round, everyone. I walked toward the exit without slamming anything or raising my voice above normal conversation level, just left the situation cleanly and definitively. At my new apartment, I sat at the small kitchen table with a legal pad and made a comprehensive list of everything I'd accomplished in the past week. Bank accounts separated and individual checking established, important documents relocated and secured, attorney consultation completed with clear action plan, party attendance confirmed for the following weekend. I set my own internal countdown timer, 7 days. The next morning, Madison approached me in our kitchen with a completely different energy signature. Hair freshly brushed, voice modulated to a lower register, and a gentle hand placed on my shoulder as I prepared coffee for the day ahead. She moved into my morning routine like we'd returned to the early months of our relationship when everything felt collaborative instead of competitive. I overdid the teasing last night, she said, eyes focused on her hands rather than my face. Everyone was just joking around, and I got carried away with the group dynamic. You're an adult, I replied, adding cream to my mug with measured movements. You choose your own words and actions. She tried a different approach, stepping closer and lowering her voice to the intimate tone she used when she wanted something specific. Let me make it up to you tonight. We can go to dinner somewhere nice, your choice of restaurant. And I'll plan something really special for your birthday this weekend. You deserve to be celebrated properly. I'm available for dinner, I said, taking a sip of coffee and evaluating the temperature. Put the restaurant reservation on our shared calendar. She blinked twice, clearly expecting a longer conversation or negotiation process. I'd given her pure logistics instead of emotional engagement. That evening, she orchestrated a performance worthy of an anniversary celebration, poured wine into our good glasses, selected music I actually enjoyed instead of her usual background noise, and laughed at everything I said with the enthusiasm of a professional audience member paid to show appreciation. The effort was impressive in its comprehensiveness. It was also obviously calculated for someone other than me. This was dress rehearsal for a larger audience that would be watching her behavior in the near future. After she went to bed, I quietly moved 2 more boxes of personal items to the apartment, essential files, backup computer drives, and the few family photographs that belonged to my side of our combined history. I texted Brock to confirm he could handle the Saturday morning crew meeting without me. I texted Sydney a simple message. Thanks for the coffee shop conversation yesterday. She replied within minutes with a smiley face emoji and the words, "Don't get boring on me before this gets interesting." My birthday arrived with clear skies and a house decorated like a showroom display for successful suburban living. Madison moved through the morning with the focused energy of a project manager coordinating a major client presentation, arranging balloons, assembling a charcuterie board large enough to feed a construction crew, and wearing a smile so consistent it looked like she'd practiced it in the mirror. She floated through the space, kissed my cheek whenever someone else was watching, and arranged every detail like she was auditioning for the role of devoted spouse in a television commercial. By afternoon, friends and neighbors had filled our house with a comfortable noise of people enjoying themselves on someone else's hospitality. Guys from my crew, neighbors from both sides of the street, my cousin Austin, who considered free food a moral obligation, Madison's complete social circle, her parents wearing their best public behavior, and Sydney arriving fashionably late in a red dress that demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of how lighting and color work together to create specific effects. She caught my eye across the crowded living room and smiled like she'd already heard the punchline to a joke that hadn't been told yet. "Birthday, man," Austin said, slapping my back with the enthusiasm of someone who'd already sampled the beer selection. "You look more relaxed than I've seen you in months." "Good sleep helps," I replied, accepting a bottle from the cooler he'd positioned strategically near the kitchen island. Melody, our neighbor who taught middle school mathematics, handed me a card in an envelope and squeezed my arm with genuine warmth. "Proud of you," she whispered close to my ear. "Whatever changes you've been making lately are working." Sydney approached with a cupcake balanced on a small dessert plate, moving through the crowd with the confidence of someone who belonged exactly where she was. "Make a wish," she said, offering the plate. "Pick something achievable." I lowered my voice to match her intimate tone. "I want a quiet life with direct communication and no performance art." She laughed with authentic amusement. "That's not achievable in this decade, but I respect the ambition." Madison circulated through the room with the practiced efficiency of a real estate agent working an open house, topping drinks, maintaining perfect posture, and producing carefully calibrated laughs at exactly the right moments. Every few minutes, her eyes swept across the room to locate me and measure the temperature of the gathering. I made appropriate small talk, kept my expression relaxed and pleasant, and deliberately avoided providing any information she could use to improvise changes to whatever script she'd prepared for this evening. My phone vibrated with a text message. "Brock, you good, boss?" I replied with a thumbs-up emoji, and the numbers 8:30. At precisely 8:15, Madison moved to the center of the living room and tapped her wine glass with a dessert spoon, creating the clear metallic sound that cuts through conversation and demands attention. The room gradually quieted and turned toward her, like an audience responding to a stage cue. She positioned herself in the exact center of the space with the kind of precise staging that suggested she'd planned her blocking in advance. "Thank you, everyone," she began, lifting her arms halfway with palms extended like a politician, acknowledging applause. "Cole absolutely deserves to be celebrated tonight. He works incredibly hard. He's determined. He's stubborn when he believes in something. He's exactly the man I married." Polite chuckles and nods from the assembled guests. She looked directly at me with eyes that had been practiced to convey warmth and sincerity. "We've experienced ups and downs like every couple who's been together for more than a few months. This past year has been particularly instructive for both of us." I could see her parents straightening in their chairs with the posture of people preparing for an important announcement. Sydney crossed her arms and focused her attention on my face rather than Madison's performance. "And because we both value honesty and authentic living," Madison continued, her voice gaining confidence as she approached her prepared climax, "I want to be completely transparent in front of the people who matter most to us." The room became noticeably quieter as guests sensed the shift in energy and tone. "I've made a decision that I believe serves both of our best interests. Cole and I will be ending our marriage and going our separate ways." The collective intake of breath was audible enough to register as actual sound. She held the dramatic pause with professional timing, allowing the announcement to settle before continuing. "There's paperwork that needs to be handled," she added with the casual tone someone might use to mention dessert options or coffee preferences. "It's nothing contentious or dramatic. It's simply the right choice for both of us moving forward." She reached behind her to retrieve a folder from the console table and extracted a thick stack of legal documents with the smooth movements of someone who'd rehearsed the gesture. "I brought everything we need to make this official. We can handle this like the civilized adults we are." Sydney leaned close enough to my ear that her whisper created warmth against my neck. "Sign it so we can finally have that dinner conversation we've been postponing." "Exactly what I'm going to do," I whispered back, matching her quiet tone. Madison turned to face me directly with the practiced smile of a television host delivering good news to a studio audience. "Do you want to say anything to everyone before we make this official?" "Just this," I said, stepping forward with deliberate calm. I accepted the papers from her extended hand, flipped through them quickly to confirm they contained exactly what I expected them to contain, and slid the entire stack into the inside pocket of my jacket. Then, I turned to address the room full of people who'd come to celebrate what they thought was my birthday. "Thank you all for being here tonight," I said with genuine appreciation. "Please continue to eat, drink, and enjoy yourselves. Madison and I will handle the administrative details through proper channels tomorrow morning." Madison blinked rapidly, clearly recognizing that my response didn't match the script she'd written for this scene. "You need to sign the documents now," she said, her voice losing some of its confident projection. "I'll accept them," I replied, patting my jacket pocket where the papers rested securely. "Then I'll take them where they need to go for proper legal processing." Her smile tightened at the edges like a mask that no longer fit correctly. "We can finalize everything right here tonight." "No," I answered with the calm finality of someone ending a business meeting that had accomplished its purpose. "We can't." Complete silence settled over the room like dust after a controlled demolition. Sydney's hand found mine with gentle pressure. I turned toward her, offered my arm in a gesture of old-fashioned courtesy, and she accepted it without theatrical flourish or dramatic announcement. I looked back at Madison one final time. "You wanted complete honesty in front of people who matter. Here it is." "What exactly is that supposed to mean?" she asked, her voice climbing toward a higher register that suggested her control was beginning to slip. "It means I'm finished being the only adult who takes responsibility seriously," I replied. "Thank you for organizing this gathering. It's been very educational." Sydney squeezed my arm with gentle pressure. "Ready to leave?" "Absolutely." We walked toward the front door, through a corridor of stunned faces and one clearly audible, "Holy shit," from Austin, who'd never been skilled at controlling his volume when surprised. The door closed behind us with the definitive sound of a chapter ending and a new one beginning.